Well, welcome to the Plunge cast with your hosts, John Curzon, Chris Curzon, AJ Powell, and Mark Jordan. How you doing, guys?
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. So we're here to talk about drone strikes and the legality of it. We're talking about America's use of unmanned, well, I guess they're technically manned, I guess, just not in the pilot seat. They're being
there's somebody piloting
remotely
them.
piloted.
They're remotely piloted,
But
yes.
we're going to mainly talk about, I guess, Yemen and Pakistan and the use of them in those two countries, sovereign territories. So why don't we start with you, Chris? What do you have? What do you think of the legality of it, both domestic policy and international law?
Well, domestically, I mean, are we really using drones domestically for anything in particular?
No, that's not what I meant. But we might be using them to spy on American citizens now. In terms of police work, because we already use helicopters and manned aerial craft for that. What I meant was, like, is it sort of constitutional to be using these in a wartime, or like a setting like this, war or not?
Legally, I'd say that we have every right to do it, just under the basis of legalities.
Is that constitutional law, or like civilian? Like,
Well, those are
civil law?
wartime laws, right?
Well, if we declare war.
Right, but we have ways around that.
Okay, so you think domestic policy allows it?
Certainly. According to why else would we be using them if it wasn't legal?
Well, the government has violated the Constitution before.
Name one time.
Well, World War I think they prevented the use of speaking German. World War II, no, during the Civil War, Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. And these things were never challenged explicitly because it was during a time where the Supreme Court would not take them up until after the war was over.
And as Mark was talking about earlier, before we started recording, the attacks in Laos and Cambodia during Vietnam kind of occurred on a extra legal basis.
Yeah, the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Yeah.
Those are still denied by our government.
Really?
We were never in Cambodia or Laos. Just in case you weren't aware. There were never troops in either of those countries.
Right.
But weren't we bombing with like B-52s?
No. Of course not. It's all denied. Denial.
Okay. Like the Pentagon Papers.
Yes, of course we were in those countries. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was there. We were following troops. We were in those countries, but it's still denied to this day.
So we're legally allowed to use drones if we're at war with these countries that we're drone striking. But if you go into like Pakistan or Sudan or Yemen and you look at these locations, are we at war with these people? Does it look like a war scenario? Did we actually declare war?
Yeah, we declared war on Al Qaeda and its affiliates after the September 11th attacks pretty quickly, and there was a broad mandate with no time frame on that.
Okay.
So that's where the domestic legal authority comes from, and I don't think anyone challenges that.
There was no dispute.
Yeah.
To our declaration of war.
Yeah, just because it's such a broad declaration of war.
It was
But
also the first time in history that war had been declared on a group of people rather than a nation.
Yeah,
that
I think that's the contention that a lot of people will have, is that there's no sovereign territory that is Al Qaeda. They're a terrorist group. They're a political entity without a country necessarily. So when you declare war on them, you're not declaring a war on a country. Like if we declared war on the German government, we're declaring war on basically the nation of Germany, and anything and everything there that's not covered by the Geneva Convention, like targeting civilians, would be legal to target.
Right. Yeah. I mean that's just the nature of terrorism. I mean that's what makes it difficult. I don't think any of us would say that Al Qaeda isn't evil and we shouldn't be fighting it in some way.
Okay, then, AJ, what's your stance in terms of the same question I asked Chris? What's your stance on it, on domestic policy and then on international law?
So yeah, like I was saying, I think it's domestically legal, just based on the authorization given by Congress. The international law is a little bit trickier because I don't think the UN Charter has really gone over what the war on terrorism is doing, So I think, I don't know. I guess after reading a lot, I could see both sides. I mean, it exists in basically a legal gray area. I think the key is it goes down to the right of self-defense, and you have the right to defend yourself in international law, if it's an imminent attack, and so that's the basis that the administration uses, is that we're defending ourselves from these people who are planning attacks, and they can point to several foiled planned attacks that drone strikes have prevented. But at the same time, you could see it as, it's nothing is imminent with these with Al Qaeda groups. They're always in the planning stages of these attacks, so it's kind of an exaggeration to call it an imminent attack. So I would say, based on international law, it's illegal.
Okay, well then I have a quick question for you then. Let's say we started paying some company like Blackwater. They're not called Blackwater anymore, but they're the security force we were paying in Iraq for a little bit. Let's say they were in charge of, protecting American interests abroad, and we were paying them for that. Or maybe we weren't paying for them for that. Maybe they had some contract there with another organization. And let's say, like, Canada didn't like what they were doing. Would they be justified in defending their own interests if Blackwater was, harming them in any sort of way?
Would Canada have the right to attack Blackwater?
Yeah, like say that Blackwater, because they're an American company,
Mm-hmm.
and then for some reason Blackwater decides to target Canadian interests for whatever reason. Do you think, or any private entity, but they're based in the U.S., do you think Canada would be justified in targeting them with foreign drones then as a means of self-defense?
If, like, Blackwater was attacking Canadians,
Yeah, they were targeting Canadian interests.
and they just so you're basically, Blackwater is like Al Qaeda in the U.S.
Right.
And Canada is the U.S.
Yeah, it could be like
In
an
this
American
example.
militia. It could be an American organization, private military contractors. I just like targeting Blackwater because I don't like them.
Right. Yeah. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I guess. I mean, it's the same. I mean, if you're just saying it's basically saying the same.
Yeah,
the same thing.
except America's the one that's now the one harboring, people that are unwanted.
By targeting Blackwater, are you talking about the Canadians at this point coming onto U.S. soil?
Well, it's just a
and
thought
going after
experiment.
Blackwater, or going to defend their own interests wherever they may be?
They're on American soil, and Canadians aren't necessarily sending in troops with using aerial drones.
And bombing Blackwater on U.S. soil is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Much like what we're doing with like supposed Al Qaeda affiliates.
I understand. I was just wanted to clear that up.
So, like, in terms of legality, the way that would break down, I think, is if we were doing that and our country wasn't, like, stopping, like, it would be like if like Blackwater is committing terrorism, basically.
Right.
If they were committing terrorism and our local authorities weren't doing anything about that, Canada has absolutely every right to go in there and try to stop it.
Okay.
Because in terms of legality, then we are being unwilling and unable. We're totally willing to stop that. So basically, we're at war with Canada.
Basically, we're harboring criminals
Because we
at that
have
point in
every
time.
capability to go in there and stop that kind of activity. But we're not doing it, which means we're unwilling or unable to do it, which means that they have every international law to come in and take out Blackwater.
Okay. So Mark, same question to you. Domestically, is it legal or illegal, and also internationally, is it legal or illegal? Illegal or illegal?
Domestically, not only do I believe that it's legal, I encourage it. I think it's fantastic. However, internationally, I do agree with AJ that I think that it is that gray area where it probably is illegal the way that it's being done. However, it could be justified one way or another.
Right. Well, since I've asked you this question, my stance on it is, in terms of domestic policy, I have no idea. There is allegedly a memo the White House has that they have not released. They have not defined it. They have not said what they're just given their justification publicly. So I have no idea. But what I do know is, based on the UN Charter, now I know how some people think about the UN. I have my own beliefs about them. They're sort of worthless. But if we go by the UN, their charter, I think it was Article 2. In pursuit of the purposes stated in Article 1, the organization and all its members shall act in accordance with the following principles. 1. The organization is based on the principle of the sovereign equality of all its members. 2. All members, in order to ensure to all of them, the rights and benefits resulting from membership, shall fulfill in good faith the obligations assumed by them in accordance with the present charter. 3. All members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered. 4. All members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. And then Article 6, a member of the United Nations which has persistently violated the principles contained in the present charter may be expelled from the organization by the General Assembly upon the recommendation of the Security Council. Now here's where I don't like the UN, is we are one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. Basically, we're in charge, along with the People's Republic of China, Russia, the Russian Federation, France, and the United Kingdom. And if we're violating the charter, it seems like there's very little recourse for any other nation to take against us. So I guess, technically, legally, it's a gray area, and we're taking advantage of it.
Yeah, well, no one's going to stop us. I mean, there's no overarching authority that's going to do anything about what the United States has done. I mean, we've committed war crimes in our history that have gone unpunished. So, I mean, that's if it's illegal, nothing's going to be done about it. So that's kind of, I don't know, one of the problems with the Security Council. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So basically, like, might makes right.
Yeah.
We're the current power. Even then, like, the other powers, they don't want to do anything against us because we all have nuclear weapons, and that's why there's been no direct war with Russia for a long time now. Because what happens? You fight with Russia, one of us could use a nuke. So we fight a lot of proxy wars between us. That was what the Cold War was about. You had Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan.
Right. Maybe going beyond the legality of it, which is kind of technical and has a lot of different aspects. Maybe we should all talk about how we feel about drone strikes first.
The morality in question?
Yeah, well, the morality, I guess it breaks down into those 3 categories, whether it's legal, whether it's moral, and whether it's strategically a good idea. I mean, I think that's how you'd have to analyze drone attacks. So how do you feel, John?
I think it's immoral.
Yeah.
Just flat out wrong. You can talk about how it's sort of cowardly to use this. I think war is horrible. It's reprehensible, and I often think that too often people say, "Oh, we only use it as a last resort," but too often we use it as the first, second, or third option. You saw it, I think, in the lead up to the Iraq War, where you almost felt like we were going in regardless of what happened. And even then, like, France, who's normally an ally of ours, was like, "No, this is stupid. There's little to no justification," and they kept making up justifications. I think I was talking with Mark about this. What was the name of the Iraq War? It was Iraqi Freedom was like the 4th one. The first one was like, what was the you were talking about last week?
Each phase had a different. It was like Desert Storm 2 was the first one, and then it just went on from there. Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Infinite Justice, Operation. I mean, there were more names than I can remember.
Yeah, and the big thing was like, oh, well, we found these like cylinders. They're used for
The
missiles.
aluminum cylinders.
Yeah, and it turns out they weren't used for anything. There was no weapons of mass destruction. Saddam knew that what was going to happen if he used it.
Oh yeah, I think at that point he had sort of learned what somebody could do to him from the first Desert Storm. He wasn't trying to step on too many toes. He was just being a dick in his own right in his own country.
Yeah. In terms of the only time I think war would be justified would be in terms of trying to end a genocide, which we have failed appallingly at, like Rwanda. I think the United Nations Charter, it was supposed to be set up after World War II to prevent another genocide, like of the Jews, was that all member nations agree, or was it the Geneva Convention? I can't remember. But all signers were agreed to stop a genocide.
I believe that was a Geneva Convention.
Yeah, and then what happened was, during each of these genocides, we said they were just internal civil war. They're just civil wars or they're crises. They weren't genocides, because if they acknowledge that they're a genocide, we are legally bound by treaty to get ourselves involved. And I think this is the only time we should be getting involved. We should not be policing the world unless a group's being cleansed like that.
We weren't the only country that was hesitant
No.
to call any of those actions genocides. However, I mean, nobody really wanted to call them genocides because nobody wanted to go in there and press their force forward.
Right.
And you're right, Rwanda was terrible. Or there's Sudan, Darfur, or maybe that's the same one. But
Well, and there was Kosovo, which we did involve ourselves with sort
yes,
of.
Kosovo we did step into.
We weren't allowed to use troops though.
You should have used some drones. What would you have done, AJ? Would you have used drones in that
Did we
situation?
have drones at that point? I know we used
In
stealth,
Darfur? Yeah.
the stealth
No,
fighter bombers.
in
That was only
Kosovo.
a few years ago.
In Kosovo, I don't believe that we had the.
Yeah, but as recent as Darfur, I mean, we've had drones since then.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
So what would you have done in that situation? Would you have put drones in there and try to stop it, or would you have
I
put a bunch of ground troops out there?
I would have probably done both. Use whatever means necessary to stop a genocide,
Okay.
especially when we have the best.
What about
trained-
the interest in China, too? I mean, you got to look at it geopolitically, too, because China had huge interest in Darfur, but they weren't doing shit.
Right. Well, that's their fault. I think they should be involved too. We all should be
Well,
together.
they're doing the same thing in Iraq now, but they're making better headway in the international community by staying out of it.
Well, is Iraq right now a genocide? It seems to me it's sectarian violence right now, and I do believe we might want to get involved, but not in terms of fighting. Personally, I think we should oust Maliki and try to get someone in there who's a little more peaceful and see if we can settle this dispute. Now, I know ISIS is a very, let's say, fundamentalist sect of Islam.
Right, we're getting a little off topic here,
Right.
I think. Like, we need to be talking about, like, morality of drone strikes. Like, what would you say? What would you have done, AJ?
Yeah, in general, I mean, I think, in general, I would be against them. I mean, it seems, well, I mean, the key is like they say that the drones are the most effective way to limit civilian casualties. But it seems like our intelligence screws up enough and consistently enough that we're almost committing terrorist acts around the world. So, from a basic point of view, I think that we're basically bombing people in several different countries all over the world. Yemen, Pakistan, Somalia. The American people, on average, probably don't even realize that we're bombing all these different countries. And in the course of that, we're killing up to, somewhere between 400 and 1,000 civilians during that process.
And what kind of time frame?
That's from the beginning of like 2001 to 2014.
Can I
to date?
interject
Up to
real
date.
quick?
Yeah.
The one problem I really have with drone strikes is I think it makes war too easy.
Yeah.
When you start off with, like, in World War II, Vietnam, Korea, we had a draft.
Mm-hmm.
So you draft anyone and everyone, but it got even easier in Vietnam because you're only drafting people who aren't in college. College, you get a way out. Then it's a volunteer military. Well, then it's even easier because all those people volunteered. They knew what they're getting into. You don't have everyone's son and daughter over there. And then now it's, we don't even have to send troops in to die. We're just sending machines or sending robots.
Yeah.
And no one really cares, at least as much as about the enemy. You say, like, oh, well, this many Iraqis died. They're half a world away. You don't empathize with them as much as you do, like, oh, well, it's just your friend's brother was over there and he got his leg blown off. It just makes war too easy, and that's my problem with drone strikes.
Well, I think it's kind of the natural progression of war because, I mean, there was probably a huge disconnect between our generation and the generation that experienced the Vietnam War because there was massive casualties by comparison of what we had in Iraq.
For sure.
So it's the natural progression of war, and we're just trying to eliminate more and more of those casualties on our side.
And that's worked. I mean,
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
It's great for protecting U.S. pilots. But I think, like John said, it's if you're that far removed from who you're killing, it makes it easier. And then the last point is I'm not even sure it's a good strategic decision. I mean, can we really go around and kill every member of Al Qaeda all around the world? Is that how you defeat them? Because it seems, and there's been studies done that it's more through economic means that you can help can stem terrorism rather than militarily going in there. and killing everybody.
I hate to bring comics in this, but in the comic books, in Marvel comics, there's an organization called Hydra that Captain America usually fights, and their motto is sort of like, you remove one, there's two more to take his place.
Right.
So it's like, and this I think goes to real life. Is if you kill one of these guys, they had family, and it's so if you first off you kill an innocent person, people are upset because you killed an innocent person. But if you kill someone that's involved with this, they still have family. Like, they hurt my family, and he was just fighting for our freedom. They're freedom fighters, not terrorists. Sort of like in the American Revolution, we're patriots. No, according to the British, we're traitors to the crown. It's how your side views it. So then the family then joins it, the friends join it. Not always.
And it seems, I mean, it almost legitimizes their cause too. I mean, it makes it's a great recruiting tool. When they say that America is our enemy, it's literally true. When there's drones flying over your head and blowing up parts of your village. So, I mean, it's tricky. If we can only kill Al Qaeda members, I think it might be worth it. But just the collateral damage that's occurred over the years is all tragic.
Yes.
And I mean, if the price of our safety is other people's lives, then maybe we have to sacrifice a little bit of that.
Okay, well, let's ask Mark, what's your view on the morality of it?
Well, I think if you want to just stem off of what you guys were just talking about, if it's just solely Al Qaeda you're talking about, that's a group that's fighting for an ideology. They're fighting for what they believe in. If you want to ever change that, as far as I'm concerned, the only way to really stop Al Qaeda from being a terrorist organization is to influence the hearts and minds, not to continue killing. Because as John was saying, if you continue killing, there's always a mother, brother, sister, friend, father who's going to come back in or join the group to join the cause because you just, basically created 15 new members by killing the one. Whether they really believed in it to begin with, as far as all those people joining up, you just, cemented in those new values. Be it drone strikes or all-out war with troops, one way or another, it's still killing on killing on killing. That as far as I'm concerned, has not a whole lot to do with just solely drone strikes. The morality of drone strikes, without talking about Al-Qaeda, it is how AJ was talking about, all based on intelligence. If the intelligence is good, and we are 100% sure that the intelligence is good, I think that they're completely moral and completely fantastic. It is very difficult to completely cut out civilian casualties at any point in time because of the types of warfare that we've been conducting ourselves in the past few centuries. I mean, pretty much every war has taken place in some sort of city. I was bringing up earlier that the only one that I can think of where there's probably as few civilian casualties as possible would be the Civil War, because most of those battles were done on battlefields with only soldiers. And with the rules of engagement is once the battle was over, you can go collect your wounded. There weren't shots fired after that.
I want to make a real quick comment. I think actually that was the turning point of modern warfare. It was the Civil War, because before then, yes, there was battlefields. But when you start to have industrialization and mechanized warfare, you can move troops very quickly, and your centers of industry are going to be in cities. Then that's when you had the ability and the reason to target cities was,
Stop the army at its production.
Right. So the Civil War was like, you still had mechanized warfare, you had railroads, and you started to see trench warfare. In World War I, you still didn't have the means to fly over the front lines yet. You had planes, but they couldn't go very far. But in World War II, you fully had bombers. You had, countries had a choice mostly to either
that didn't limit
invest.
Civilian casualties, though.
Well, that's when
really
civilian
increased them.
casualties increased. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, okay.
So you had the choice of either going fighters or bombers, but even then you had dive bombers, you had small bombers, and you fly over enemy lines and then bomb the industry. That's when, so with the beginning of the Civil War, you had started to have mechanized warfare, and in World War II, it finally came to be that civilians were finally put in direct harm's way. The only safe place was in the country, hence the Lewis Carroll novel, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The beginning, they're being shipped out of London to the countryside to be protected.
Right.
No, and that makes sense. I'm not going to dispute that at all. The fact that civilian casualties definitely increased since going after the industry rather than just going after the army itself. If you can stop the troops, basically where they're grown rather than out there on the battlefield, then you're going to stop new troops from coming out.
Right. But with I guess the argument for drones then would be we're limiting civilian casualties
On our side, which in our favor. I mean, there's no question about that. You're not risking pilots anymore. If you can have drones to even do the intelligence gathering and have that be more effective in any way, shape, or form, that takes out the factor of having troops on the ground as far as that goes. Limit our casualties on all facets.
And that's part of the problem is the efficiency of how we're doing it. I think that was AJ's third point. How effective is it really? And a lot of the problem we're having is with intelligence, and you do need to have people on the ground that are doing the recon on this stuff. I mean, you can't just be flying over and the video isn't that great if you look at the videos. Like, I don't know if you ever look at the WikiLeaks videos of it. It's not like you're seeing clearly who these people are. The resolution's pretty crappy by comparison to what we would need to have actual good intelligence for the ground. So you still have to put troops in there to even get it going, which is crazy if we're going to be using limited drone strikes in Iraq. We're still going to have I don't know how many people to support this kind of an operation, but we're still going to need people there, and who knows how good they're going to be at their job while they're doing this,
Yeah, I think current. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've had problems with that in the past. We've literally turned weddings into funerals. We've literally bombed, like schools and stuff. That's fucking crazy. Hospitals. I mean, we shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff. Yeah. We have to have better intelligence if we're going to be using this kind of weaponization. Yeah, I think currently the what we look for when we're looking for these groups is we're looking for a group of usually young men, 20s to 30s, maybe up maybe to their 40s, that are getting together. I think that's the qualifications we're initially looking for, and then we spy on them with the drones, seeing if any of them are holding anything like this. I don't know, that would be like an AR or AK. Or a child. Maybe RPG over their shoulder, but that could be a lot of different things. The RPG stance could be like a girder, a 2x4. An AR could be, like you said, a child, basket. It's hard to see on the resolution of those videos. So yeah, I agree. We need people on the ground, but I mean, then we're putting our own people in harm's way again, in terms of putting these people in these dangerous situations, trying to find these people. Yeah. And not only that, but I think we do these things called double taps, where you make sure they're still dead or they're dead. Oh God, isn't that sickening? Yeah. And then so you have first responders. Well, they sometimes think, well, they're their buddies. We've destroyed ambulances. Yeah. Right. On those double taps. Yeah.
And bombed funerals, I think, too.
Have we really done that too? That's crazy.
Because it's possible that it was Al Qaeda militants trying to dig up their bodies or something. I think I read something about that. But we've bombed people at funerals, I think.
It is sort of surprising to me. I haven't heard about the double taps that we've been doing, but I do know that would, and that's sort of sickening. That is something that we would have adopted from, I believe it is Al Qaeda who initially was doing that with their suicide bombers. They would have one go off, wait for first responders, and then send a second one.
Well, this actually goes back to warfare, where you're going through a battlefield. Some people are pretending to be dead to avoid conflict, but you go around the battlefield putting bullets in all their heads to make sure they're dead, or you have a POW to take, because some of them, like I know in the Korean War, and I think in World War II, I mean some of the Japanese would not want to be captured, but those that allow themselves to be captured sometimes would have a grenade in their hands.
Yes, and it does make sense. I mean, from a survivalist standpoint, take them out, make sure they're dead. Sure, but if you're going after first responders or anything like that, that is more of a terrorist action that I can see. That is blatantly taking out civilians rather than just ensuring somebody is incapacitated.
Yeah, there's no Americans who are going to be put in direct harm's way immediately from avoiding shooting anyone coming to the aid of the people we just shot.
Especially with a drone strike. It's not as though anybody's in harm's way after we just drop a bomb with a drone that is not piloted by a human directly. There's no reason for a double tap as far as I'm concerned there.
Yeah, the drone strikes I mean, it's almost like a secondary issue of how we're doing like this war on terror. Like, when is the war on terror going to end, if ever?
Well, if it's
You
anything
know.
like the war on
What do they
drugs,
call it? The never-ending war. What is like the terminology for the war we've committed on terrorism? It's like that non-ending war or something is what
Right.
people have started labeling it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it could. Like, when are people going to stop affiliating themselves with Al Qaeda? You know, like, can nobody use that name anymore? I mean, that's the thing. It's like Al Qaeda is a very loosely organized group of people. It seems like, and I mean, they've carried out successful attacks, but I mean, it was basically a group of 6 people that were involved in that, using low technology, using our own technology against us. I mean, it's a really disproportionate battle that we're fighting. So we have like all this technical superiority, and we've got this very loose network of people. I mean, are we ever going to stop bombing them? I don't know. I mean, it seems like it could go on forever. I think that's the scary implication of that, is that it seems to give a broad mandate to attack people all over the world using military means.
Ooh.
And that's what needs to be watched. I mean, that's why you have rules about war. That's why you have international law regarding war. It seems like.
Well, I want to throw you guys a curveball here and change the subject. Sort of. It's still about drone strikes, but this is going to be about U.S. citizens too.
Oh yeah.
Now, we all know that U.S. citizens have been targeted and killed by drone strikes in the past. So I think the same question arises: do U.S. citizens can they be legally killed? Because they will definitely fall under the Constitution, being civilians. Do they have rights to a fair trial and due process, which is under the Fifth Amendment? Or do they pose an imminent threat? And if they can't be captured and likely to get away and present a clear and present danger, can they then be killed, much like a criminal drawing a gun on a police officer?
Well, I guess yeah. You can
Well, yeah, I don't know how many instances we've actually drone actually striked a U.S. civilian besides Anwar al-Awlaki.
There's at least that one, yes.
Yeah, so we've had that. Like, what else have we had besides that? And that was a guy that was basically, what was he doing? He was providing, he provided the plane tickets for the people that were getting on the planes to take him over to fly him in a 9/11. I mean, that guy already committed a crime that he was directly involved in that was so large that it seems like you got to take a guy like that out, because he was also like in the process of committing more and more crimes against the United States. And what were we going to do? Commit ground troops, capture the guy, prosecute him, give him fair trial, bring him back to the United States and do it that way? Or were we just going to kill him?
Where was he when he was killed?
I think it was in Yemen.
Yemen or something? Yeah, and we actually killed his kid too.
And his son, was his son an American citizen?
Yeah. So we
So
killed
that's,
him
I mean,
too.
that's like the biggest
That's
issue to me.
pretty
Is
messed up.
probably his son.
Yeah.
I
Now
mean, it's
here's-
one thing.
Here's sorry, AJ.
Well, I was just gonna say it's one thing for Anwar al-Awlaki. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of supporters, I don't think. But I mean, his son. What about? I mean, was his son a member of Al Qaeda? And if he was 16 years old, I mean, and is there another one too? Wasn't there another citizen?
Maybe I've heard 3, but I can't.
Yeah, I
settle
think
on that.
it's 3.
My problem, first of all, if he's part of 9/11, I still think he deserves due process. Like, let's say hypothetically, was it Flight 81, the one that crashed in Pennsylvania, 91,
193.
193? Let's say hypothetically they landed the plane, and they took the terrorists off. I would want them to face trial. I don't agree with that kind of just kill him now, even though he was directly responsible for the deaths of however many people he killed on the plane to hijack it. I think due process is where it's at. Although I do sympathize with the clear and present danger. If they're like that idea that they have a bomb, they're going to set it off. I have a gun and I'm standing right by them. I think you're more than welcome to shoot them. But it's hard to prove when they're like in a truck and they're driving through Yemen and then we decide to target them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that's where like a court of law would have to narrow it down, because it has to be a jury of the peers, and then and who are we going to, get involved in this court? We're going to sue the American government for this? Like, you targeted an American civilian and their defense. Like, I don't see that happening ever.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we just go after people in the administration who made this decision to target them. Like, I know people call Condoleezza Rice a war criminal, and Bush and Cheney and Karl Rove I certainly don't. I disagree with what they did. But, I mean, I'm not going to call Obama or his administration war criminals either.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I just harshly disagree with what they're doing.
There are definitely actions that are questionable as to whether or not they're war crimes, but to single anybody specifically out as being a war criminal is sort of crossing the line as far as I'm concerned as well. But as far as trying to take an American citizen, foreign or domestic, who is either suspected or 100% for sure that they're serious, egregious crimes they've committed, trying to take them alive is always the best bet. If they can face a trial at any point in time, I would love to see that trial. That's something that I guess they don't call it the justice system for nothing. It doesn't always work necessarily, but it's always, as far as I'm concerned, better to have them face a trial. It is difficult to prove whether or not they can be taken alive, or some people it's almost impossible for them to go up without putting up a fight, say drawing a gun on a police officer. Most people are going to try and go out with a bang at that point in time.
Yeah.
All right. Any thoughts, Chris, on the U.S. citizen?
No, I think I covered that, man. I don't, I think it's been so isolated and far removed that it's just kind of a side effect of the rest of the things that we were doing to try to stop terrorism. And there's not a whole lot we're going to be able to do about limiting those types of casualties, because we don't do enough to limit civilian casualties from other people. So it's non-consequential. We're already committing war crimes as far as I'm concerned. We're killing civilians. What difference is it if they're ours or not? Because we're already dramatically changing the landscape over there. Okay,
I have another question for you guys. Do you think we should treat civilians of other nations differently than we treat civilians in ours? So I know the civilians here, American citizens, are covered by the Constitution. They have certain protections. And the reason why I bring this up is because people in Guantanamo, there's been a lot of debate about whether we should prosecute them in American courts under U.S. civil law, or do we prosecute them in military tribunals as enemy combatants. I personally think we should treat our citizens the same we treat other citizens of other nations. I think that's the only really fair way to be about it. Otherwise, you just have a double standard, even though other countries might not treat ours the same way as we treat theirs.
I think ultimately it comes down to where you were taken captive. If you are caught on American soil, regardless of what you've done, charges should be filed and you should see due process in a court of law in America. If it's something, say you were taken captive in Iraq, Yemen, wherever, you're a member of Al-Qaeda, it should probably go to a military tribunal at that point in time, because you are a POW at that point in time. There's a difference between anybody who comes to this country who's a non-United States citizen, commits a crime here, be it a non-terrorist crime, they're going to still see the United States justice system. Justice system.
It seems like a pretty bold statement to treat all foreign citizens like U.S. citizens. I mean, that was the whole debate going on with the Edward Snowden leaks, because our intelligence services were spying on German government officials, and all basically people in government all over the world. So that would be pretty it would hamper intelligence gathering services a lot, because if you afford every international rights like American citizens, you wouldn't be able to wiretap anybody around the world without a court approval.
So I guess
that would be difficult.
It does hinder us.
Gather intelligence.
It does hinder us because we can't just pass a FICO or the FISA courts, say, oh yeah, you go ahead and wiretap, Tony. Well, he's not Tony Blair anymore. Cameron, right?
Mm-hmm.
David Cameron. Go ahead and tap his phone.
Mm.
I guess they could in theory, but it wouldn't hold any jurisdiction in the United Kingdom.
Right.
But I just think let's say we bring someone home who's okay, you've planned a target, you've conspired to kill American citizens. I think you should punish them under, if we're going to bring them here, punish them under American court of law, under our laws, like conspiracy to commit murder, or to terrorism, because we have those laws.
Right. Well, yeah, I agree with that when it comes to the Guantanamo prisoners.
Right. I think that's
mean,
what I mean is
okay. Yeah.
like you capture someone. I'd rather have like civilians say, okay, guilty or not guilty, versus a military tribunal. I mean, I almost feel like it's just going to be like, you target our troops, you're guilty of sin.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's at least here we have habeas corpus, like a right to due process. They've been just sort of in limbo.
Yeah. Yeah, Guantanamo's a whole different issue that, I mean, is also a national disgrace in my mind. I mean, those are dangerous individuals, and I mean, everyone, like Congress people were trying to avoid bringing them into the U.S. because they said they were so dangerous. But I mean, that's completely ridiculous because they'd be under armed guard the whole time. We're not just going to let them
Right.
loose. And I mean, they deserve their day in court, whatever else you say to me. I mean, I think it's been way too long, especially if some of them haven't done anything, which may be the case. From what I understand, some of them may be completely innocent. So we've held people for like 13 years that are completely innocent. And that's scary.
What about you, Chris?
In terms of Guantanamo,
Yeah, like should we punish them in an American court of law or military tribunal or let them go? I guess.
well, dude, yeah, everyone deserves their fair trial. That's just something that should have happened. I thought we vote like part of the reason why I voted for the Obama administration was for that in particular. That's just complete nonsense. It needs to be addressed immediately, and it never was correctly. So that's just kind of a sickening part of our
Yeah.
legal system that we have.
I think here's what I've heard about why Obama has not, or the administration has not done anything about these people. And it's because they have been there so long. The countries don't want to take them back, and those that do, they're afraid that they're going to release them and they're going to be tortured and killed for what they may have released. There's individuals out there who are like, "What have you done? Are you a double agent? Did you tell them anything? Are you going to try to get involved with us now?" And there's the other theory also is that those that were perfectly innocent, are we going to be releasing now radicalized people who want to bring us down, who are going to try to seek out individuals like themselves who don't like us and to target us in future attacks? And what do? Release them here? Do we take care of them like a POW, like the German POWs we did in World War II? Do we give them a reasonably high cost of living? Or
Hope they assimilate.
yeah.
Yeah, probably low chance of that.
Oh, let's. I think we should wrap this up. Final thoughts, guys.
Well, I guess it's time to really look at, just because this situation could get out of control eventually. I mean, who knows if it's out of control right now, and what we're doing is a terrible practice. But I mean, eventually there's going to be other nations that have this kind of technology, and they're going to have some vindictive attitudes towards us for what we did potentially.
So we're setting the standard.
And we're setting the standard right now, and we've led the way in a lot of ways. And this is kind of a weird way to have to lead like military combat. We can lead the world in other ways, and we've definitely put our mark on history.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, my thoughts on the whole situation are, like I said earlier, I feel like we're providing more legitimacy to Al Qaeda the more we use conventional warfare to fight them. I mean, I think it's almost like we've created a monster, and it's never going to go away just by killing every person that affiliates themselves with Al Qaeda. And I think that's what needs to be explored, is what is this all leading to? Is this making us, I mean, even if it's making us safer, is it really making the world a safer place? And that's what we're going to have to face from now on, probably.
Al Qaeda aside, still very much for drone strikes, provided intelligence is good. So at this point in time, I think before going too much further into bombing everybody here and there that we might have a problem with the drones, we do need to work on our intelligence gathering. If that can be, for lack of a better term, perfected, then by all means continue to go at it. The the amount of casualties we're stopping on our side is nothing but a good thing.
Okay. Well, I'll close this out with a little story of my youth. When I was in high school, I had to do a project for school, and in the process, I interviewed a man named Thomas Sutherland. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him.
Yes.
For anyone watching this, he was abducted, I think, in Lebanon. He was working at the university there in Beirut. He was held for like a number of years.
6.5.
6.5 years. I interviewed him, and then later I attended one of his speeches at my school. He basically said, when asked about the Iraq War, we should stay out. What we should have done was used all the money that was going to the war to buff up our intelligence gathering, and also Israel's intelligence gathering and that of our allies. We're not necessarily reactive in invading countries, but we're proactive in stopping the attacks that, as a result, end up with military action. And I pretty much agree with that. I think you're not going to stop these people, but 100% of the time, but you can at least stop an attack here or there. And you can't just rely on them being incompetent like the underwear and shoe bombers who failed to light their bombs on planes. We got it, and I'm not saying the TSA suck. I'm not saying they're terrible. They're great people either. Something's always going to get through, but we got to be a little more vigilant about it without violating people's rights, which is a fine line to walk. Well, anyway, this has been a Plunge cast. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Please like and comment and subscribe.